code, press 2. There are 9 participants in this conference. Muted.
Through Supervisor Web Services today. My name is James Schultz. I will be your presenter today. So we're going to go ahead and record today's session. When we go through a section of the training, I will then pause the recording once it's completed and open the floor to a few questions, and then we'll continue on with the recording as we go through the rest of the session and turn it on and off when we get to the question and answer sections. So in our agenda today, we've got just an overview of supervisor functionality. We're going to go through the dashboard, preferences, the attendance category, the scheduler category, reports category, and at the end we'll have a full question and answer section. So let's go right into the product. So Supervisor Web Services is a generic term, really. It can be used by supervisors and payroll administrators and HR personnel for various functions in the system. So today we're going to talk about more on the supervisor end of things and everything else. Supervisors, as most of you already know, this is the section where they go in, manage their employees' timesheets, making sure all the punches are correct, they're being paid properly, and in some cases putting information in regards to labor groups for doing like department transfers, job transfers, that kind of information. It's where employees' schedules are maintained. Various reports can be run, of course, for the employees, configuring preferences for how the system will function for that particular supervisor. And then we may talk also about the expense capability in the system today as well. So we're going to start off talking a little bit about the dashboard. The dashboard, for many of you, may already automatically come up. If it doesn't, it may actually be a page in the system over here on the left that you can click on to bring up. It also is activated by clicking on this little icon up here called Dashboard. So the dashboard was designed to be a one-stop shop for everything that you need to do and know about your employees in the system. And it's configurable depending what the system administrator has given you access to be able to do. So you can see I have edit settings here, which we'll talk about in just a moment. So in this example here, we're displaying the exception summary, timesheet requests summary, some user reports. These are reports that are already configured for the system supervisor to use, approaching overtime display, employee seniority, and unprinted point documents. So these are items most people use to, again, manage their employees. But aside from the display, it's, as you already know, it's also the navigator. So as an example, if I need to deal with my exceptions, so I've got early out, late out, and missed punch. I don't really right now just need to deal with my missing punches. When I click on the exception type, the system's going to automatically navigate to the timesheet in this particular case, filter down to just the employees that have that particular exception, so I can quickly go in, make edits, and complete my normal day in tasks. Let me go ahead and do a quick edit. When it comes to editing the timesheet, remember that you can use whatever time format that you're already comfortable with. So if you prefer to key in AM and PM, you can do that. If you're used to a 24-hour format and you want to key in 1700 as an example for 5 p.m., you can do that. So I can key in, whoops, too many zeros there, 1700, and it will convert it to 5 p.m., or I can simply key in 5:00 p.m. So again, whatever format you're most comfortable with, the system will allow you to do, and it knows what it means. At the same time, if you want to know a couple of shortcuts on this screen, if you put in 5P, that also knows that it's 5 p.m., or 5A would be 5 a.m., okay? So just a little couple of shortcuts when it comes to doing the editing. So based on the exception that you selected in the dashboard, once you've completed editing all the employees for that exception, you'll see over here on the employee list panel that the employees are now gone. I've basically completed all the edits for that exception. I can go back to my dashboard, and you'll now see that the missing punch exception is now gone. And I may not need to deal with the early out and late out exceptions, and they may not even be here. The exception codes that are listed in your exception summary gadget are based on your user preferences, and we'll talk about those in just a few moments, okay? So I don't need to worry about editing early out and late out. I just wanted to know about them, so they're here. I can click on them, of course, to see which employees were late and early. When it comes to the time off request, if there's any pending requests that are being made of the supervisor from their assigned employees, you can just click here. So it's going to take me to the appropriate place in the software, which happens to be the scheduler request page. So again, the dashboard's purpose is to alert you of things that you need to address, but also to quickly navigate you there. You can, of course, just click on the scheduler request page, detail page, and go here, but the dashboard kind of makes it nice and easy for you to do that, okay? So now in here, I can either approve or decline the employee's request one at a time. So I can just click on this first one as an example, go through, and you'll find out in this particular case, the timesheet was already processed at payroll. So as a supervisor, I forgot to approve this request. So it's already been processed at payroll. So I'm going to need to talk to the payroll administrator about getting this addressed. So these are configuration options in the system as to how a pending request is handled when the system's already processed payroll of software. One of the features the system can be configured to allow you to do that if a pending request is approved after a timesheet's already been processed to payroll, it can be processed as a retro pay adjustment, meaning that you can approve the request, it will go to the employee's timesheet as an adjustment, and then for any report that you run for that particular pay period, that PTO request, approved PTO request, will show up in the report. It will automatically be transferred the next time payroll runs the payroll process, okay? So down here, I know this one wasn't processed to payroll yet, so I can approve, decline, or remove the request. The employee told me I've changed my mind. I don't want to actually take that day off. They can actually remove it, so I can approve or decline it here, okay? I can include a note back to the employee if it's been approved or declined, whatever I want to say, back to the employee. So when it sends a message, both an internal message and email to the employee, or if they're using a time clock and you're using the time clock to send messages back down to the employee, it'll include this message, this note from the supervisor to the employee with the status change. Okay? You can also simply check this box here and approve all selected. That's what this all selected approval section here does. So I could just have checked this and this. If I've got 10 different employees for this entire month, as an example, requesting time off, I can quickly do the approval all at one time, or individually, as I just noted before, or you can simply do the approve all button, which will approve all records that you see on the screen. One of the things you need to be aware of when you're on this screen and you do actually make approvals, that the system, once you've made an approval of a request, it actually disappears from the screen. And that's simply because of this status filter. By default, it goes to pending, so that when you come here, you're only needing to address the ones that are waiting for you to approve or decline. Okay? Once you've approved or declined them, they don't need to be on the screen. But if you want to go back and review them, of course, you can simply come back here and choose which filter you want, all, pending, approved, or decline, and you, of course, be able to see all the records regardless of their current status. So you'll see in this example here, the employee's already been approved for several time off requests. One is pending because I didn't do anything with it. And two are pending because even if I want to, I can't. I'm going to have to work with the payroll administrator to get these addressed because I didn't approve them before payroll is processed. Also, please note, when you can talk to your system administrators about this, that we have a notification feature available in the system that can notify the supervisors. So if you're just really busy, you didn't get a chance to go into the system and even see the dashboard that there were pending requests, we do have a notification feature that can send you an email or a text message, actually, letting you know, reminding you that you've got pending requests that have not yet been approved. This can be done before the pay period ends or directly after the pay period ends. So hopefully you won't get into a condition where you have a pending request that you didn't get a chance to do that end up, the timesheet was already processed to payroll, and someone's going to have to make some kind of an adjustment somewhere. So you may want to make a note of that if you're not using the notification feature and mention it to your system administrator. Okay. So going back to the dashboard for a moment. So you'll see I'm now down to 3 vacation requests, 2 that I couldn't address right now, 1 that I simply just didn't. If all your vacation requests or all your PTO requests were addressed, this would now be completely empty. Just as you noticed up here for the exception summary, when I corrected all the missing punches, the missing punch exception simply cleared from the screen because I don't have anything to do. So when you log into the system and your exception summary is empty, your time off request summary is empty, and I would also say if you're using the point system, your unprinted point documents area is empty. You have nothing to do. You log out and go on with the rest of your day. Okay? So it's a nice, simple way of seeing what problems you need to address and quickly navigate to those problems. When it comes to the reporting side, all the system reports that were published either to all system users, to all supervisors as an example, or ones that you published just to yourself or that were published just for you to use, are displayed here in the user report section. So this is just a great shortcut to get to some of the reports you need. It's not just going to navigate you to the report category. It's automatically going to display the selected report for you. So here I actually have 2 reports, a department summary and a task labor summary report. One is user only. This means a report that is that's in my user section that only I'm going to be running. This shared report means that anybody who has access to the report category can run that report. So if I go ahead and click on the department summary, the system's going to automatically take me to the report category and preview that pre-configured report. So again, it's just a nice shortcut. Everything that you need access to in that dashboard. You can still, of course, go anywhere you need to manually. The dashboard just kind of simplifies that process. Informs you more of what you need to deal with, of course. All right. So I've got approaching overtime configured. This is more like an approaching total hours. So maybe I have this set for 30 hours, and I want to make sure that people, once they get to that point, I can get them to stop working, or whatever the case may be. Or maybe simply I've got a special project coming up this Saturday. I want to ask some people to work, and hopefully I can find some people that may not create weekly overtime, whatever the case may be. I've also got, in this case, the employee seniority being displayed here, because maybe when it comes to working the weekend, it'll be employees with the lowest seniority that I ask first, or for that matter, employees with the highest seniority that I ask first. And if you're using the point system to automate your organization's or company's attendance rules, anytime an employee reaches a designated point level, the system will automatically put a document here, an alert here, to let you know that employees reached that level, so that you can then print that document, review it with the employee, have them sign it, take whatever action is necessary, and put it in their permanent file. So for those of you that are not using the point system, just a quick reminder, the point system allows you to assign points to things like exceptions, like tardies, leave earlies, absences. You can assign a point value every time those happen, and even when they're consistent or consecutive, there can be a single point value for consecutives rather than individual point values. We assign points to all these exceptions. We can also assign points to pay codes and reason codes. And when we can then designate various point levels. When an employee reaches a point level, we're going to print a document. And we use Microsoft's mail merge feature. You create a Word template with like your company or organization logo at the top, whatever language and verbiage you want, and then we put our fields into that document to create this sort of sign-off document for the employees. So again, once they reach these designated levels, the system will let you know that it's happened, so you can then print the document and take the necessary action. Okay? So this is just a sampling of the information that we have available in the dashboard. Let me go to Edit Settings for just a moment. Again, this capability is all based on your system administrator, so if there's something here that you see that you need, you'll need to talk to them to get it configured, or if you've got the edit capability, you already have the capability of turning these on. Okay? So we have the approaching overtime gadget. That's the one I already have up here. Employee seniority, again, already set up here. In-out board. As you know, we already have an in-out board page in the attendance category. If you just wanted to see a quick snapshot at the moment that you log in, you can actually have that in-out board displayed here on this page. It's not refreshed real time like the attendance category in-out board. It's just a snapshot at that moment that you log in. And of course, anytime you refresh this page, it would also refresh. If you're using time clocks, this push device status, especially if you've got clocks in your area that constantly have problems because of power failures or network issues, that kind of thing, the clocks generally work really well. You'd be able to see that what's happening to a clock itself. So as an example, if for some reason you have a bunch of missing punches for a lot of your employees for yesterday, and you don't see their in punches for today, chances are they've punched, but the clock is still holding the transactions. This gadget would actually show you the last communication update of that particular time clock device. In this case, I only have a mobile device, and it's been a long time, as you can see, since it's communicated. But this gadget, if you're using clocks, and if you've got transactions that aren't showing up for lots of employees for kind of an extended period of time, it'll let you know ahead of time that, the clock is not communicating, and this clock may be outside your door, as an example. Come out and find out that somebody just unplugged the power or something. So you'll be able to remedy that situation pretty quickly without actually having to involve anybody else, if that's the case. The time off request gadget, that's the one that I have over here. Again, if employees are requesting time off, it's going to make the display. Our unprinted point documents we just talked about, which are down here. Our approval status. Our approval status and our timesheet status are almost the same thing. It's just a different view that talks about the approval level of the timesheet. So we actually have, the NovaTime system has 8 approval levels total. 3 are hard-coded when that's open, submit, and then the last one is payroll. But you can have up to 5 user-defined approval levels, a hierarchy, if you will. In this particular case, I only have 4 levels: open, submit, which is usually by employees, approved by supervisors, and then finally payroll. So if your employees are required to submit their timesheets, basically it's their electronic signature, you can make sure that they're all submitted. If they haven't submitted them, by simply clicking on open as an example, it's going to take me to the right place in the software so I can see which employees did not submit their timesheets. So it's just kind of a quick view here if the employees and you go through the approval process. Okay? The exception summary, we've talked about, that one's down here. Point balance, if you're using the point system, aside from the unprinted point documents, you can display the point balance. Here is, again, a quick snapshot of where the balance is right now. User reports, that's one we were just talking about earlier. This one that's down here. Attendance accruals, just like the point balance, this will show the accrual balance for the employees. Just a quick snapshot here. Remember, you can see these features everywhere else in the system. And the punch head count is literally going to show you for any given day how many employees physically you actually have punched in and have punched out. Okay, so you can just quickly see that for generally for your assigned employees. And that's the gadget. So hold on one second. All right, we're now going to talk about user preferences. Okay, and that's our preferences category here. Wanted to start off with this one next to explain some of the functionality and challenges you may have when you're doing things like editing a timesheet. So, of course, this is based on the system administrator giving you access to this particular category in the pages here. But this is where you can actually change your password and some of your contact information, like if your email address changes or your cell phone changes, just for contact information. The system uses the email address, and depending on what you're using in the system, the cell phone or phone number may also be used. But the preferences preference page, this is where a lot of things that you get to see in the system happen, okay? So as an example, we're just going to touch on the key features here that people use. So the second one here, the employee full name preference, last name, first name, or first name, last name. This is literally when you're displaying the employee list panel, like when you're in the timesheet page, how the employees are displayed. Most people probably use last name, first name, but there are some that want to use first and last. Okay? The next big thing to talk about here is the exceptions. okay, number 6. This exception selection area here determines what exceptions you will see in a couple of different places, actually a few different places, okay? So first of all, it determines which exceptions you're going to see in the dashboard, which exceptions you will see in the dashboard. But in the dashboard, those exceptions are only displayed if you've got employees that meet those exceptions. So as an example, originally you saw the early out, late out, and missing punch. But I cleared up the missing punches, so the exception no longer showed in the dashboard. So you can turn on all these exceptions here, but unless employees actually meet some of those exceptions for the pay period that you're looking at, the exception itself won't be listed in the dashboard. So notice that I have absence, early out, tardy, late out, missed punch, short meal. If I go up bring up the dashboard really quick, let me get rid of the status here. You'll see that I'm only seeing early out and late out because those are the only ones that actually have numbers with them, okay? So the preferences controls what exceptions that I see here or potentially can see here, and also controls the summary page, the attendance summary page of what exceptions I will see here. Now, unlike the gadget, these columns automatically appear no matter what. So in other words, the exceptions that I chose in the preference area number 6, absence, early out, tardy, late out, missed punch, short meal, will all appear here. Okay? They'll all simply just appear here regardless of which ones are selected, okay? Or which ones actually have a count. This was the original way that people would use to actually sort by like missing punch and then make corrections in the system. But now that we've added the dashboard, these don't generally get used here that often. Okay, it's usually just coming from the dashboard. So in our preferences, number 6, the exceptions you choose here are the exceptions that are potentially displayed in the exception gadget in the dashboard, the columns that are displayed on the attendance summary page, and also the features that are displayed in the history, attendance history pages. So as an example, I'm going to jump straight to the history summary page, the calendar summary. So you can see here we have absence, early out, tardy, late out, missed punch, and short meal. These are based on the exceptions that I chose in my preferences. So on a regular basis, when you're trying to maintain your employees, you can really go to your preference section and turn off all the exceptions that you normally don't deal with on a day-in, day-out basis, meaning that you don't need to deal with absences. I don't need to deal with tardies at this moment. I don't need to deal with any of these other items, perhaps, but I do need to correct absence and missed punch. So if I just configure these two here, as I'm looking at the dashboard, I'm only going to see potentially those 2 items. I have no absences. I have no missing punches. This is going to be empty. When I go to the attendance category, the summary page, I will only see those 2 exceptions because those are the ones that I'm really concerned about on a day-in and day-out basis. Okay? But as you use the system to, as an example, review your employees once a year, and you want to go to review, part of the review, you're going to review their history and their attendance trends with them. So you're going to go to the calendar summary page here in the history, and you want to review this information with the employee. Well, obviously, just absence and missing punch may not be sufficient for that review. So at the time I want to do the review, I can simply go to my preference section, turn on all the other exceptions that I'm interested in reviewing with the employee to discuss their trends. You know, maybe they're tardy a lot on Mondays, and I want them to clear up that behavior and stop being tardy on Mondays. So you can normally trim down your exceptions, turn them off if you're not using them day in and day out, and then turn them back on when you need to. Those are the only 3 areas in the software that the exception selection in the preference category control. Okay, so the dashboard exception gadget, the attendance summary page, and the attendance history pages. Okay, beyond that, I can have just the absence and missed punch turned on in this example. But if I go to the report category, I can run the exception report for all exceptions because that setting does not control which exceptions I'll see in the exception reports themselves. Okay, so just to kind of recap, So your selections here and your preferences in Section 6 controls which exceptions you'll see in the dashboard, the attendance summary page, and the attendance history pages only. It does not control which exceptions you'll see in the exception report if you go to the reports category. Okay? A couple more things to talk about in here. This is where we control whether or not the dashboard automatically launches when you go into the system. Okay? So you can actually go in here and turn this on and off as you need to, but again, it's based on the system administrator if they give you the ability to do so. They may actually have it configured where it's on all the time, and you don't have the ability to turn it on and off. So you'd be able to see if you come in here. Okay? The timesheet page, section number 11 here, our timesheet setup. This is where you can control which timesheet features you are having displayed. So on a regular basis, if you don't have to want to see the accrual summary or the point system summary as an example, because those are already on separate pages, you can actually turn these features off here when you don't need them. And if for some reason you do want to see them back on the page, you could just simply come in here and check them. So by turning the things off you don't need, it declutters the page, so to speak, and it actually makes the page come up faster for you depending on your bandwidth getting to the internet. Okay? A couple more things also to talk about in here of importance would be Section 14. This is the employee search feature. So when you're in the employee list panel and you use that search feature, it's actually a partial string search, meaning that I can key in 100, and it will search for anybody that has, in my example here, anybody with employee ID 100, or for that matter, that has 100 in their first name or their last name, because I chose just these three fields. Okay? I can also just type in the beginning of or part of an employee's name. So I can put in TEV, and anybody that has TEV in their anywhere in their first name or their last name, or for that matter, even for some people in their employee ID, the system will find those employees. The reason I'm bringing this up, as a general rule, by default, the system has all these items, badge number, social security number, employee ID, first name and last name, already pre-selected. My recommendation would be for you to actually only select employee ID, first name, and last name. And here's the reason why. If you're trying to search for an employee by ID and you put in 1,000, not only would it look, if I move these over now, not only would it look to see if the employee, that 1,000 is an employee ID, it's going to also look in badge number and social security number. Okay? So I've come across a couple of circumstances where this was configured this way, and somebody was finding multiple employees with 1,000, even though they only had one employee with ID 1,000 because of social security number. It was just a partial string and a social security number. So if you are using the search feature, my recommendation would be to actually turn off in your preferences the badge number and the SSN if you're just trying to search on employee ID. Now, if you're not using employee ID and you're using the social security number field for the search, that's fine as well. But using more of these ID fields than just one creates a challenge when you're trying to find a specific employee. So our recommendation would be just to use these three. Completely up to you, but this is how you can control that. We also have virtual records available in the timesheet. So we can display absence records. That would be past absence. So today is Tuesday. If an employee was absent yesterday, it will actually show a record in red in the timesheet that the employee is absent. The great thing about that is when I go to an employee's timesheet to deal with any other exception, the absence is pointed out immediately, so I know I need to address that. Either there was a approved time off request that I didn't address, or the employee simply is just absent today and I need to deal with that missing transaction. Okay, maybe they forgot their badge or whatever the case may be. We also have unscheduled records that can be displayed, virtual unscheduled records, and scheduled records, future scheduled records. What these allow the system to do, if you want to use them, is to paint an entire picture of the employee's pay period. So if you use scheduled, future, unscheduled, and absence, and use a weekly pay period as an example, you'll see all 7 days. So as an example, Sunday would be unscheduled. Monday through Friday of this week, Monday could possibly be absent if the employee didn't have any punches. nothing would be displayed from today because it's still today. But then for Wednesday through Friday, those would show in a different color, green, as unscheduled, and then Saturday again would show up as unscheduled. So it shows me the entire pay period for the employee. So I can quickly see what's going on, what they're scheduled to do, what days they're not scheduled to work. All the questions I could possibly need answers to as to what the employee is supposed to do for this pay period or for this week are displayed for me in the timesheet. But they're actually virtual records. They don't really exist. They're just for display purposes. So if you're not using these already and you're interested in it, of course, talk to your system administrator. If you want to turn them on and off because you've been given access to do so, this is where you do that. Okay? And then also the retro pay feature. That can also be enabled and disabled depending on the access you've been given into the system. And I want to talk about the retro pay feature just a little bit for those of you that aren't already using it. So retro pay is basically a timesheet adjustment. As you probably already know, once a timesheet's already approved at your level or above, you can no longer edit the timesheet. Somebody else can that's got at a higher approval level. But once it's your level or above, it can no longer be edited. And of course, the highest level is payroll. So when a timesheet's already at payroll, it's already been processed, the employee's paycheck has probably already been cut, and somebody realizes there's some kind of a mistake. With some setup features turned on and given access to this, so it is controlled by the system administrator, I go ahead and go to the timesheet. I'm not going to save my changes in here. And I'm going to go back to a pay period that was already approved to payroll to show you the feature. So again, if you don't have this today, talk to your system administrator. They'll be able to get this going if that's in fact something that you're supposed to do. So here's an example of an employee's timesheet. There seems to be a couple of challenges in here that somebody did not catch. But because the timesheet's already at the payroll status, so it's at payroll, down here at the bottom, because I have my preference feature turned on, I've been allowed to do it by the system administrator, I now have an adjustment timesheet area that is displayed. I can't edit the timesheet. Timesheet is logged. It's already, again, once it's at my level or above, which means payroll is at the ultimate highest level, no edits directly to the timesheet. But I can come down here, and so for Saturday there was something happened with the punches. Not sure why somebody didn't catch it. The employee wasn't paid properly. So I can go into the system. I can choose everything from putting in the actual punches for the employee to just putting in an adjustment pay code, whatever the adjustment may be. Maybe there was some on-call hours, the employee didn't get paid, whatever the case may be. You put them here. When you click Save, the system's going to automatically look to see if those hours that you input here had an impact on this pay period's daily or weekly overtime. If it does, the system's going to automatically adjust whatever was calculated here or whatever you input here to reflect those changes. So if I simply do a calculation override, if I've got the ability to do a calculation override, and put in the hours rather than just punches, and those hours affect weekly overtime, the system will then add an adjustment record to move those hours from regular to overtime or vice versa as needed. Okay? And then when you run a report for this particular pay period, so let me do this for a moment here. So let's just put in comp. I'm going to put in 8 hours and save it. So now anytime I run any report for this particular pay period, in the additional options section of the reports, there's an option to include adjustments. So if you don't include that option, you'll only see what's in the timesheet. You go to the report, additional options, tell it to include adjustments. It will then include whatever adjustment you put here. Okay? So that's the report. And no matter what pay period you're adjusting, what's going to happen with that data is that automatically going to get processed the next time the payroll administrator runs payroll. So as an example, I made the adjustment to the previous pay period. When you go to the pay period that the adjustment's going to go to payroll with, which is the current open pay period, so in this case it happens to be this week, you'll see in your timesheet summary the adjustment record in green. Okay? It even will show you what pay period that was for. So if this was actually for the first week of January where employee missed on-call hours or something as an example, you'll see that there's an adjustment that's going to go with this week's payroll that was back from that date. So this record is going to go with the next payroll process for this employee, but it does not affect the overtime hours or any of the hours in the current pay period. It's just going to be sent with that payroll. So if the employee worked 40 hours in this pay period and somehow missed 8 hours in the previous pay period, 48 hours are going to go to payroll, but it's going to be 40 hours of regular from this pay period and then 8 hours of regular from the previous pay period. It will not impact this pay period's overtime. Okay? So it's a nice way of automating adjustments. So as an example, during the approval process for that time off request, had the system been configured to allow approvals that are completed after payroll has been processed, the system would have automatically added that PTO record to that pay period as an adjustment, and you would see it here in the current pay period, and it's going to go out with the next payroll process. So we can automate that whole section, but that's how it functions. Let me go back into the preferences. And there are quite a few other things in here, miscellaneous things for sorting various items on the screen to how you pick and choose group records as an example. The rule of thumb is this. When you go to the timesheet and you want the timesheet to behave differently than it does, or there's something that's not there that you're expecting, the first place for you to go to check to see if you can change that behavior is to actually come to your preferences category preference page. And if it's here, so as an example, you're no longer seeing your tardy exception and you want to review your employee at the end of the year, you can't figure out why you're not seeing it, come to your preferences. Chances are the setup option is here, and as long as the system administrator allows you to change it, you just change it here and you're ready to go. So always keep your preferences category in mind when you're reviewing your time and attendance category, the attendance category, just in case you need to turn something on or off or accidentally turn something on or off moving forward. All right, now we're going to move on to the attendance category. And depending on how you're using the system, some of the things we're about to discuss you may or may not be using today. So the first place I'm going to stop is the attendance summary page. So this generally serves two purposes. One, you can approve all your employees' timesheets at one time, one page at a time. So as an example, I'm displaying just my 10 employees here. And if the pay period is completed, rather than approving individual timesheets on the timesheet screen, I can do all my edits over there and then come over here and just click approve this page, and I'm done. Okay? For those of you that have full access to the screen, if you accidentally approve an employee's timesheet and realize you made a mistake, you can actually come back here and reopen that timesheet. So it's already sitting at approved, and as long as you have the ability to do so, and it hasn't gone above your level. Once it's above your level, you can't change this. Only a payroll administrator could. But you can actually, I accidentally approved this one, reopen it, go and make your timesheet change, and then resubmit it again. So that's the basic purpose of this screen. Of course, you've got summaries and other things here that might be informative for you, but that's its main purpose. So, of course, we have the timesheet screen. This is where the bulk of your work is done. Hopefully, you're using the dashboard to notice or come across any of the edits that are required to get everything working perfectly. But this is where we go through and, again, make a simple edit, as we showed you before, of how to change the in and the out time. Okay. Some companies and organizations don't have employees go through the request time off process. So if an employee is requesting time off, and you've got some kind of a form or they talk to you and they're asking for a vacation day, you'd literally come to the timesheet, select a day, so I can also do Friday, select the pay code, and put in the hours. And of course, based on your system configuration, if the employee doesn't have enough time, when you click Save, The system, of course, is going to prevent you from saving the timesheet. It's going to let you know the employee doesn't have an available balance. And based on your user preferences, down at the bottom of the screen, will show you that balance. Now, in my case, I have the accrual balance turned off, but you can, of course, turn that back on if you're using the benefit accruals feature. Okay? So, of course, what's in the timesheet is what's going to go to payroll. All right, so I'm going to just go ahead and save this for a moment. Talk about a few of the other features here. If you have access to the columns button, that determines which columns you see in the display. Okay, so you can actually turn that on or off. We also have a freeze frame feature that I don't have activated for this particular supervisor that allows you to freeze a select number of columns in the display. So if you're constantly having to scroll over to the right-hand side, okay, you'll notice here in this example that even the dates are flowing off the screen. So if I want to change the employee's department, what was this record again? I've got to scroll back here to the left to be able to see the date. Okay, so you can actually configure the system to freeze the first number of several columns here. I believe it's up to 9 columns or 10 columns that you can freeze, so they're constantly in the display even when you scroll off to the side. Okay, so that's also available to you. If you're not using that today, talk to your system administrator. They'll be able to get that going for you. Okay. Basically, editing the timesheet is pretty simple. One thing that sometimes confuses people, if I need to add a record for Saturday, I don't need to click the Add Record button here. I don't need to click the Add button here. I can simply go to an empty cell and just choose Saturday, choose my pay code, and I can add the record. The only time you need to use the Add Record feature is when you're out of cells here and you want to add another cell to be able to add it. So you don't need to click Add Record to add anything into the timesheet except for an empty cell so you can edit. Other than that, you just directly edit the cells themselves. Okay? All right, I want to talk about the multi-add a little bit. So multi-add is a quick and easy way to add transactions for one employer or multiple employees at one time. So as an example, you had a power failure yesterday. All the employees eventually got sent home. There was no power to the clock. Depending on the clock you have, the battery dissipated, so nobody can punch out. So now you have your employees all missing out punch. I can simply move all my employees over here, put in the date, so the 17th to just the 17th, so put in my date range, and just put in my out time of 5 p.m. I've just now punched all my employees out at 5 o'clock. Okay, so you've got the ability of doing more than just adding transactions for one employee for the week. So if the employee forgot their badge all week long and worked from 9 to 5, I could simply just have chosen that one employee, put in my 9 o'clock transaction here, put in my 17 or my 5 p.m. transaction here, choose the entire date range, and it'll automatically add those transactions to the timesheet. Okay? We can also do transfers in the same way. So from 9 to 5 all week long when the employee didn't have their badge, they were actually working on this particular task and this particular subtask all week long. This is what's going to go to the timesheet. And then, of course, once those transactions are there, I can go to the timesheet and do further edits. So the biggest thing to remember when you're doing the multi-add is when you're going to click Process, it's going to display a message on the screen that's going to tell you how many records it's about ready to process. Okay? So in this case, there's 35. So if you're doing all your employees for a week, I've got, roughly 7 or so employees here. 35, yeah, that makes rough sense. I don't need to know an exact count, but yeah, that makes sense. If I was trying to add a simple in-out punch for one employee for the week and it showed 35, there's a major problem. That would be 5 records normally. This is not number of punches. This is number of records. So, I made a mistake. I didn't mean to choose all the employees. So always stop when you're doing a multi-add. Make sure you review this particular item to make sure this count makes sense. If it's too high, then chances are you've selected a wrong date range or a wrong employee range. Make sure you just go ahead and click Cancel, and you can make whatever changes you make. Once you've done that final acceptance, it's going to put all these records in the timesheet, you can't reverse this automatically. You'd have to go to the timesheet and delete or correct all the transactions for the employees individually. Okay. The schedules page is just a display of the employee schedules. Just nice and simple, quick access for your selected employees. You can see when they're scheduled to work and their schedule versus actual hours. The accruals page, this is where you'll actually see the employees, not just the employees' accrual balance, if you're using accrual benefits in our system. So you can see this employee has some vacation, sick, and comp time coming with their available balance. You can see this summary on the timesheet page if you turn that on to your preferences. But you can also see the detail here of what's creating that balance. So if an employee has any questions, they don't have access to the employee web services, and you're not displaying the balance at the time clock, and they've got, or I should say that, you can only see the balance at the time clock, you can't see the detail. If they want to know what's creating that balance, they can come to you and you can directly answer their questions. Same thing for the point system. Not only does it show the employee's balance for the point rules they're assigned to, but also shows you the individual records that's generating that balance for the same thing. If they've got questions, want to know why they're at a certain point level, you can directly provide them with an answer. Then we talked about the history page. Okay, a little bit more about in here. The annual calendar, just a quick view for the year based on color coding of your pay codes of how an employee was paid, what pay codes they had for the year. Okay, monthly calendar does the same basic thing, but just for a single month. But the main purpose that most people use this for is like the employee's annual review. So they can look at the breakdown of the employee's attendance by day of the week and see if there's any challenges to the employee's attendance or corrections they need to make based on what the employee is doing. And remember, the exceptions that you see here are controlled in your preferences preference page. Okay, right now I'm only seeing the absence and the missed punch. Okay, we're now going to talk about the scheduler category. Remember, in the NovaTime system, we do scheduling by exception. We can have schedules associated with the employee's assigned shift schedule, their shift rule. So if the employee, in this example, always works from 9 to 5, you set up a shift rule that has 9 to 5 in it, you never have to schedule that employee for anything. But if they happen to change for just one day, okay, come in here, I can get rid of that one day by clicking minus, click that particular schedule up here from a template, put it here, click save, and I'm done. If several employees have this exact same schedule that I'm changing, I simply come down over here, choose those employees, click save, and then all of the employees will now have this schedule. They don't just have the change. Some people get confused by that. They're not going to just receive this Wednesday change. They will have this exact schedule for this week. So just a quick way of managing schedules for multiple employees. And of course, we can use the filters here. So I can simply choose a filter if I'm responsible for 2 departments. I can go down to just the one of my departments that I'm working with right now to do their scheduling. I can choose the other department just as an example. But it really was designed to be a quick schedule override. If you're not using shift schedules and you're consistently using the scheduler itself, you know, I can clear the whole week, or the whole week starts off being empty. I can grab a schedule here. Maybe this schedule applies to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then come down here. This one applies to Thursday, and this one applies, or Tuesday, excuse me, this one applies to Thursday. Again, when I click save, all the selected employees I have over here will now have that schedule. If you have the employee that you selected here that's highlighted with a little red arrow has a pending request, you don't have to even go to the request page to approve it. It'll actually appear down here at the bottom of the screen. And I can actually click this little up arrow here, and will then move that pending request into the employee's schedule. Now, of course, you wouldn't want to select multiple employees because you don't want to give multiple employees the vacation request at this point in time. But that's what this pending request feature is down here. If you're using requests in the system, at least it reminds you that you've got a pending request for the selected employee, the first selected employee that has the right arrow here. Okay. So these are the templates that are being displayed on your screen. You may or may not have access to add these as needed. If you do need to add them, you use the Add Maintain Templates feature if you have access to do so. Click New. Usually you're just choosing your pay code for schedule changes. You do a pay code 0. For PTO, of course, you're going to choose vacation or sick, where the case may be. You choose the schedule group that goes with it. You put in the start and end time or the hours. If you're doing a meal override, you can put that meal amount in here. Save it. This just creates all the potential templates that you can use on that screen. Once you have your templates created, you can then assign them to the screen by clicking the Insert Templates feature. And coming down here and actually choosing the template that you want to have displayed on the screen itself, and then save it, and now that template is going to be literally here for you to choose. Okay? So this one, again, once I've got my templates here, I can subtract the day, click on a template, and add that record. If I'm doing split shifts as an example, I can actually, I'll go ahead and clear this day, I can actually choose multiple. Instead of just doing one, I can choose multiple. That one's not going to do it. Hold on. Not sure. I don't have one actually that's going to work very well on the screen. So this will allow you, multiple allows you to choose 2 templates that should not have a schedule conflict at the same time to apply them to your employees. Okay? Freeform schedules, if you're using this page, is very similar in the fact that you still have the templates that you have published on the previous screen. Okay? But this one is used so you can manually just key in the start and end time of a schedule change. So I can clear the day, or I can simply just change the start and end time. Or, of course, so let me do this. Sorry, let me go back to the templates for one moment. So I can clear a day, click on a predefined template on that day, and it will be applied, and I'm done. Of course, I select which employees I want to apply it to here. Or I can just modify the record directly. Or I can just go to Sunday as an example here where the employee wasn't scheduled to work and actually put in the schedule manually. So this lets you make schedule changes on the fly without having to just apply templates. If your employees consistently work the same schedules, you can just use templates on the template schedules page, and it's really easy. If you're constantly having to make up new schedules, they're not standard, you can't use templates here, that's what the Freeform schedule page is for. Okay? And then finally, we have the recap page. The recap page is generally used by companies where employees have to be scheduled using the scheduler on a regular basis. So remember, we have the shift schedule. If they're assigned to the shift schedule and they work that schedule, you don't have to do anything. But if they constantly change, you can configure one employee, configure their schedule. And you can come here and we have all these copy features. So I can copy all my employee schedules from 2 weeks ago to next week. Or I can copy one employee's schedule for last week to several employees, including this employee this week. So this one allows you to copy schedules. All these features allow you to copy schedules for employees. So if you're having to always manually change schedules, this allows you to do the copy process very quickly. Okay?